Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
There was an attempted assassination on the former president, Donald J. Trump. If you haven't seen that headline, I don't know where you've been, probably out in the woods somewhere, and you didn't have cell service, because I'll bet you that headline and that news has hit more people around the world than who knows since Michael Jackson died. I don't know what to even compare it to, but I think everybody in the last 48 hours has learned that President Trump, some 20-year-old punk from a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, took some shots and actually managed to squeeze off a number of rounds from 130 yards away. I've got my good friend Tom Myers on here again. Tom, retired FBI, ERT supervisor, and all of that is going to come into play, especially on the things that I want to cover here. But let's just start off. I mean, like I said, everybody knows what happened, kind of the gist of it. And what I really want to discuss today is how the investigation is moving forward from here. You know, what those guys are looking for. Obviously, the ERT from Quantico, and I'm sure there's so many federal agents up there in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's probably doubled the population by now. But first of all, Tom, I hope you're doing well, buddy. But, let's just get into this, man. How in the hell could this happen?
Yeah, so a little more background. So for viewers, both you and I went to Ranger School in the 90s. We're you're commandos. You don't sleep. This is what you do. You make sure everything's done the right way. Security, alternate plans, everything else. So that's the background for you and I, the commonality. In between that, I was a police officer. I actually did one of these in support of one of the presidential visits. The First Lady came into town. So I know from the police officer point of view. And then I was in an ops center a couple of different times in my FBI career, the FBI one, and then over at Homeland Security. So I kind of know the culture a bit, and I know how the Secret Service sets up and everything else. So how could it happen? I suspect that I'm going to go out on a limb on this. We probably had 3 different communication systems going at once out there. You had the Secret Service, number 1, you had the state police, number 2, and you probably had that local agency that was out there. And I'm going to guess they were assigned for outside that perimeter, that visual barriers, is the fence line out there, and they couldn't talk to each other. That's what I'm going to guess. I'm going to say, boy, I hope it's ineptitude and it's not something more nefarious than that. But my goodness, I'm without speech.
Well, especially when you have the rhetoric that has been going on in the last years, but especially in the last 6 months, threat to democracy, a threat to our nation. What are all the things even President Biden has been saying? Jill Biden called President Trump evil. And this isn't just like on a social media post that hardly anybody sees, like, what I would do. This is the First Lady out there speaking to, who knows, hundreds of people. And well, with them, it's more like tens of people. And then, but it gets magnified, especially with the media. They magnify and they get these clips and they play them over and over and over. And they've so vilified former President Trump that it just, to me, it's like you are setting. And okay, what was the last one? Biden actually say it's time to put a bullseye on Donald Trump.
Yeah,
that kind of rhetoric. You know what? Most of us hear that kind of stuff, and you're going, "Oh, he's just talking metaphorically." But there are psychotics out there, and people that are barely hanging on to reality and life in general, that are out there that hear that, and they say, "Oh, that's my cue." And I've got a good friend, Michael Yon, that even said, there are people that are literally being trained, and he's a specialist, especially with Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think I'm going to try to have him on the show here in the next little bit, but he understands how these people are being groomed to even be like suicide bombers, and they're being prepped, and they're just sitting there waiting. They've been trained, they're ready. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I am saying there are people out there that are just on the edge. And I think once they really delve deep into this 20-year-old kid, they are going to learn that this kid was, well, first of all, he all through high school, he was bullied. He was a loner. He couldn't even make the high school uh, rifle team because he was such a bad shot, which is, thank goodness he was that bad of a shot. Otherwise, President Trump might be dead right now. And, you got all these circumstances, and then you got this crazy rhetoric going on. All of these circumstances come together, and you have the culmination, and then some kind of a level of incompetence based on the scouting of the again. I have to laugh because I'm so pissed about this. It's like, really? Are you kidding me? With the current circumstances, I mean, if you look back at September 10th, 2001, what was the circumstances right before 9/11? And, it was this kind of level of, the signs were all there, but people were just ignoring them or completely missed them. There's just the level of incompetence that was going on then is just incredible. So that's kind of my view of where we were, or where, on Saturday and everything, and kind of the atmosphere that's going on now. But you know what, Tom, as a seasoned investigator, and I don't know how many shootings you've actually, been the supervising. Yeah. And you know what, I think it'd be really worthwhile to explain to the audience what an ERT is.
Okay, let's jump into it. So, evidence response team, Pittsburgh is going to have the lead on this, the lead office on this. And this is really where the FBI shines, and shines well, and maybe even the best. Counterterrorism and counterintelligence, things like that, very good. And public corruption, that's what they specialize in. And I heard it once said very adroitly, was police work murders, you guys work conspiracies. So this is the conspiracy. I'm just saying the complexity and the level of it. So when I go out and do these speeches or talks and everything else, people ask me, like, I worked with you guys, it's gridlock and everything else. Well, it's different. It's like working on a battleship or an aircraft carrier versus working in a small boat like a SEAL team. And you hope that the two are really competent, but you wouldn't want to put a SEAL in charge of an aircraft carrier. Contrarily, you're not going to put somebody else. So it is very much different, but this is where they shine. And why they shine is because we have those evidence response teams in all the 56 field offices, and there's going to be at least one up to 5 or 6 is the high number with the really big offices. I had 3 in Baltimore, and each one of them has a camera, and they'll move out, and there's a 24-person complement with additional backup people that can augment that in a heartbeat. So Pittsburgh is probably about the same size, and they'll get contiguous offices sent over there right away. So probably before the end of the day or within midday Sunday, you had 200 workers on site is what I would guess. All of them ERT trained, and all of them do collection very, very well, and they do it very organized. You're also going to have, what rounds out is the shooting incident response team, SIRT. None of this is sensitive. It's all on public records out there. We'll explain exactly what that is. So you're going to get round out units that come in from, and I'm using some military parlance there, you're going to get round out units, specialty, slice elements that are going to come in. And that's going to be your trajectory people and other special photographers and measuring devices that are going to come in, as well as interviewers and inspectors and things like that. That's probably another 100 people that are coming on board. So we're talking roughly around 300 investigators on this. This is the biggest thing since probably 9/11. I mean, I'm sure there's some comparative, but going back to the Hinckley-Reagan shooting, that's the last time we had one of these. So they know the importance of getting this right. And good forensics takes the fire out of these conspiracy theories. And I preach that over and over again. And there's a lot of competent people that are out there doing this. So what they're doing right now is establishing an organized process to catalog all that information. You can bet they're getting the names and identities of every single person who's a potential witness for what they saw, because they're going to be overly comprehensive. As a police officer and doing forensics myself, and this was the film days when I was, if you shot 36 photos, that was a lot. Maybe 2 rolls, 4 rolls of film, that was a lot. So we're talking roughly 100, 125 photos, easily 1,000 photos at a shooting like this. This would probably go a bunch of cameras. I'm going to guess at least 10,000 images are going to be exposed on that. So every piece of ground. And in addition, what's going to happen is they're going to scan that entire ground over there and bring it down to 1 millimeter of accuracy. So they're not going to just use Faro scanners to do that. They're going to use specialized equipment, theodolites, and they're going to get out there and bring that down to 1 millimeter of discrepancy. So they have that exactly. So we don't have another Abrams Zapruder film from JFK where people are taking shots at it. Good forensics takes that away. Another example, Navy Yard shooting. That shotgun couldn't fit in that backpack is what I heard over and over again. Well, that was an assumption that was put out, I'm guessing. And I'm not really in my purview with saying that, but I think probably what happened is our offender in the Navy Yard shooting put that 870 pump action shotgun, disassembled it, and probably secreted it under his coat if it didn't fit in the backpack, because it's hard to collapse something down that small. My point is, those are possibilities. There was an assumption, and the bag doesn't make that doesn't have those same dimensions as how those conspiracy theories run wild. But good forensics takes that away, and contemporaneous and reporting and things like that, not sitting on the information. The truth is going to come out on this. It already is, because you can't get away with everybody has a camera right now and everybody's taking films and footage, and the geo positioning of everybody is going to put everybody in position very quickly. So they're going to have, I'm going to guess, I don't know how many people are in attendance there, but I'm going to guess several hundred are going to be interviewed here, and probably have already started doing that. They're already cataloging everybody. But that's the magnitude. So let's bifurcate that right now, as long as I'm on a roll on this. It's going to work off the known forensics. So the scenes that we have right now, aside from that giant encompassing scene that's there, but the specific tight scenes are going to be the areas of impact of the rounds. Of course, the former president's podium area. We're going to have the shots that were taken by the Secret Service person, the CAT team member up on the sniper's nest, we'll call it that. We're going to have our offender. That is going to be a scene. We're going to have the offender's car. The car we already know had munitions inside of it, IEDs, such like that. They're going to walk that back to his residence very quickly. They're already on his electronic means, and all of that is going to build a giant matrix on one side that's going to spawn other leads off of that. And that's where your continuity goes from, and that is enmeshed with all of those leads that are going to be cut out from there. So that's ground truth right there, is your potential scenes. And then, like I said, we have the electronic means. That's going to be his phone and all his communication devices. That's done by the CART people. That's the computer people. And then the evidence, the pure evidence, is going to be done by the evidence response team. Pittsburgh's going to have the lead on that. You're going to have a very strong leader who's going to have parking spaces and putting out that evidence in situ, so it doesn't sit and go into a back closet. Rather, it's going to get exploited very well. And when I say that, I mean they're going to check it for fingerprints. It's not going to just disappear and then pulled back later on. And you're going to have professionals that are going to decide what's that. Of course, DNA is going to be pulled from that right away as well. All of that is going to be deconflicted at Quantico. This is probably the biggest crime scene since 9/11. So you can bet it's all ships at sea and every man on deck right now is going to happen. So that's probably a rounding out of what's going on right now. And if I had to estimate, boots on the ground, we're probably talking 300 workers, and support crew is probably going to bring it out to 500 pretty quickly. And they can do that. They do it very well. And they're, of course, going to be enmeshed with the state police. They're going to be augmented with that, and maybe even the local PD if they're big enough to do that.
Well, I think it's important also to think about this isn't just a federal investigation, because based on the press conference that was there, the attempted assassination is going to be the federal. So that's what the FBI is taking the lead on. And clearly that's a key piece. But the second piece is the people that were actually injured, and the one retired police chief, and his name escapes me right now, I apologize, but that was actually killed. And what a stud that guy was, man. Jumping on top of his daughter and, throwing his wife and daughter down and jumping on top of him to protect him. And then he actually literally took a bullet for him. So rest in peace, hero, man, that dude. But the sheer fact that he was murdered at that, and that is, I know, what the Pennsylvania State Police are taking over. And then the other two individuals that were actually hit. So to me, with that mass of humanity that was in the line of fire, the one shell or the one shot that took, that hit President Trump in the ear. I don't know if that's actually the one that hit. Is it? It's not Cacciatore. What is that? Police chief?
Compatore, I think is his name. Is a fire chief there.
Yeah.
Compatore, and I'm doing that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And
apologize if we get his name wrong, but so which round actually hit him and killed him versus hitting the other two? That's I don't know. Will forensics be able to actually tell that?
Yes, they're going to have that pinned down to like I said, 1 millimeter, no problem. And now with not even photograph, you're going to have all the videotape that was going on, and then pretty big press corps covering that. So, it's not going to be a problem meshing all of that together and having it make sense pretty quickly. So, I mean, like I said, the story will be told very well. I go back to the Parkland shooting down in South Florida at the school there, the high school, and they were able to geolocate everybody from their phones and their radio transmissions, so where all the police officers were. And so this is a no-brainer, no problem. They're going to be able to do that pretty quickly. And now we're quite a few years beyond that now, so the systems are very robust, and they do geolocating very quickly. And then speaking to you saying, the joint investigation, I used to hear that quite a bit. I was the liaison to DHS both in the operations center and its inauguration when it was first stood up, and then later on I came back as the acting senior rep to DHS from the FBI. So I know the ops center. I was also a counterterrorism watch commander at one point as well. So I understand the tempo. I understand what happens on these things very quickly. I used to say when there would seem to be some kind of Jerry Springer sort of thing that people want to fight over jurisdiction, and unless it's a bad case or something, then they want to dump it off on you pretty quickly. But the truth of the matter is forget that. Who has primary jurisdiction? The answer is, do you have dual jurisdiction all the time? Now, that being said, there are occasions where we've been told to go away, and I can think I forgot the name of the newspaper, the Gazette, that was over in Anne Arundel County, where that madman came in and killed a lot of the press people there. And they just said, we're going to work this through the state system, and that's fine. We augment them and we supplement them accordingly, and we stay outside the perimeter if they want us to come in or not. And there was no federal nexus there. There was no request for it, and that's fine. But this clearly you have an overlap right now. So this is obviously going to be a dual jurisdiction that's going to take place unless the state people defer and say, you guys run it, we'll get copies later on. And that could very well happen too. It's more likely.
Yeah, but you know what? My understanding is the federal system doesn't really process homicides anymore.
I can't say what they're going to do on this one over here. I mean,
well, I'm just going based on the press conference that they had there with that, what is it? The SAC, the special agent in charge,
right?
Along with the colonel and the lieutenant colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police. They said it's going to be 2 investigations. The federal is going to be over the actual assassination attempt, and then the homicide and the attempted homicide for the 3 Pennsylvania victims. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, like you said, they're going to be sharing data. They're going to be sharing, equipment. I mean, it's the same crime scene. So even though they overlap, um, I'm sure that the two are going to absolutely complement each other, and which they should. It's the same thing. It's like the bullets that hit President Trump are the same bullets that hit the murder and the attempted murder victims. So it's all, to me, it's all coordinated. But let's out of everything that you're looking at. Well, first of all, I think, as a side note, I think it's awesome to know that DNA is actually what identified the shooter. So I saw a couple of comments on, I can't remember if it was on a video or what, but they're saying, how can DNA, how can they even say that DNA, again, this is where all the conspiracy theories come out. They're saying, how can they say that DNA identified the shooter? It's like somebody had his DNA, in advance, and they knew about this. And I was like, no, you know what? Rapid DNA can identify this guy within 90 minutes. They have his profile. All they had to do is, I'm sure they probably kind of knew who he was. But yeah, identifying him via DNA with rapid DNA, all they had to do was just take a little blood swab out of him. And man, they could do that super fast. And there's folks in Pennsylvania that I've trained, with the MVAC, and I've seen their labs, and I know that there's rapid DNA systems right there. So
yeah, first class system. Pennsylvania SWAT responded out with a Rook machine on a one of the scenes I went to early on when I took over the evidence response team. Top shelf agency right there. They came out and it had a shield to it. It's basically a skid loader that has a shield to the front of it, and this is what ultimately brought this siege, this barricaded young man who had killed a police officer before, to an end. This is all online. All the imagery are. So they're very competent, very good, and as you could tell from the briefings, and you can tell. So I'm somewhat distracted by listening and looking for a validity scale if anybody's not telling something that, like, why are you doing that? So no, absolutely. And Jared, you and I have spoken about this. There's maybe 200 or plus around that, forensic savages, people that either detectives or crime scene techs that really, really understand this. Some journalists and writers and such too that really understand the broad base of DNA and trajectory and fingerprints and can speak to that, and they can really bring it home. And they're using that core of forensics knowledge to drive a lot of what they're seeing. So when there's something that doesn't make sense, and I'll break from that for a second. Example, I think what we sent out that close-up image from President Trump's ear, and you could see that what appears to be that trajectory coming, that line right through his scalp, actually, by the ear there, and that's what we look at right away. That's what we're assessing, like battlefield assessment right away, to tell us what happened on that. When I heard that other man was dead, and it's either a headshot that takes place, but usually that tells me it's an M4 because there's just so much more velocity, and it was a headshot, so either one would do that with a high-powered pistol or something like that. And then jumping off.
It wasn't a 223 either. This one was. They said it was a 5.56. So you've got a higher grain there and probably some more, pump behind it. So yeah, whoever that actually hit, it's probably going to take him out. And sadly enough, that's what happened to that police or that fire chief. So, but yeah, the fact that they have image of that round that's, right behind President Trump's head.
That as well. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, that just shows you the level of imagery. Because what is that traveling at? 3,200 feet per second or something like that?
If I recall, 3,800 feet per
thing's
second.
moving.
I've forgotten, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Compared to a pistol, it's maybe 1,300.
Yeah.
1,300 at the top end of pistol rounds.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.